evening to everyone who's come to another episode of Get Set Up's learning classes. So, what is the topic today? It's a very interesting one with a lot of us, our thoughts cross on this topic. Is my monthly income enough to last a lifetime? What we're going to be discussing out here is with a very eminent speakers. Our key takeaways being understanding the basics of systematic withdrawal plans. We all have heard about these terms, but not necessarily everyone knows how this works and what are the various implications of it, and how to use the mutual funds to ensure that we can get a regular income as we enjoy the best years of our life. Also, we learn how to evaluate the various investments in the industry for stability and consistent returns. And we will discover some strategies for aligning mutual fund choices with our risk profile and investment goals. And more importantly, gain practical knowledge of managing your SWP, which might assist in regular cash flows. So what's Get Set Up? I think a lot of you are familiar with Get Set Up and are coming back. So welcome again. And for those of you who are new to the Get Set Up platform, Get Set Up is our mission to help those over the age of 55 learn new skills, connect with others, and unlock new life experiences. Our goal is mainly to reduce isolation and loneliness and equip our community with the tools and knowledge to age independently in place. Our community engages in classes online as well as through offline activities like traveling together over longer as well as day trips. The recording of these classes are available on our Get Set Up app. So please download the app if you haven't yet and join the community of learning from your own peers. Today's class is once again sponsored by Franklin Templeton. Franklin Templeton is one of the largest asset managers globally with over 76 years of experience and currently managing assets globally to the tune of 1.64 trillion USD. That's as of June 30th. It has been part of the Indian mutual fund industry for over 28 years and currently manages assets of about 95,000 crores, again, as of June 30th, 2024. Franklin Templeton India offers a diversified bouquet of products spanning equity, debt, hybrid, and international funds, which can help us to meet our various financial goals. They have a rich history of being pioneers in many ways, like using the concept of SIPs, which we keep hearing day in and day out. Their global parentage and local market expertise position them uniquely in delivering the value to our investors or to the investors. And who do we have today to speak about this interesting topic? Nitin. Nitin has more than 22 years of experience in the corporate training and sales, specializing mainly in the banking and financial services and insurance business. He is a certified trainer and a BFSI trainer, mainly delivering training programs on insurance sales, banking operations, and performance coaching. He's led many initiatives for Axis Bank, for Bajaj Alliance Insurance, ICICI Prudential, Mahindra Finance, and many similar corporates in the BFSI segment. He's conducted training and coaching sessions under CSR projects as well. And he has an extensive client base, which again includes the likes of Bajaj Finserv, ICICI Bank, Axis Bank, L&T Finance, Tata AIA. So over to some housekeeping for the evening. Please feel free to put your questions as Nitin and I, have a discussion on the topic in the chat box. We'll take up the questions towards the end of the conversation. As well, we'll open up the mics towards the end of the conversation for any fresh questions that we may have at the end of the topic. So let's dive into our topic for the day, which is your monthly income enough to last a lifetime? Now, this question, I'm sure, crosses everybody's minds. It sure does mine, for sure, every now and then, is have I adequately kept my corpus invested across various asset classes? And can it take care of my monthly expenses, or can it add to my monthly income if I continue to work? And how would that optimization of those returns ensure that continue to live an enjoyable life in this stage of my career or this stage of my life? So maybe a question to start, kick this off, Nitin, to you is how does one, and before we probably go into it, actually, let me quickly ask the audience a quick question. I'm assuming, we both are assuming that a lot of you all are already retired, and some of you in this group are about to be retired. So anybody who's who's not yet retired can quickly raise their hands in the chat in the on screen, and we'll get a sense of what kind of a profile we have in our audience. So as we go into this conversation, uh, Nitin, what are the various strategies or asset classes? I've retired recently, or I'm in the process of just reaching that stage, which is a few months away. How do I ensure that the corpus that I'm able to get, which has collected over the years, which could be either from my provident fund or through other means of savings, or maybe in some of our cases, even some kind of inheritance, which may come at this stage of life. How do I ensure that it's allocated well enough that for the next 20, 30, or maybe all the way up to age 100 and longer, it is adequately covering me for my daily expenses, medical exigencies, if any, or any other surprises that life may throw out. So how do you recommend approaching this stage with the corpus? Over to you, Nitin.
Okay, so thank you so much, Ashwini sir. And first of all, a very formal good evening to each and every participants. It's so nice to have all of you over here. So Ashwini sir's question, let me just break it down into, a number of sub questions. Number one is that how much is enough, right? So we are having a mixed bag of people who have already retired and who are about to retire in say some 5 years or 10 years down the line. So there are some very important points that one needs to consider while building the retirement corpus. Number one, as you must have said, there is a very famous saying, right? That never put all your eggs in a single basket, right? Why this saying? Because there are so many asset class and it is always preferable to have asset allocation, right? Whenever you do any kind of investment planning or any kind of, savings. So one has to keep this thing in mind that every asset class has to be covered. Now, it also depends upon a couple of factors when we talk about retirement planning or retirement corpus. Number one is that what is my risk profile, or what is, I have to understand as an investor or as a person that, as far as my risk profile allows me, right, I should take the decision, right? So, so where I'm coming from, because definitely equity for that matter provides excellent result if we talk about the overall returns, if we talk about uh, the cumulative annualized growth rate of the kind of return equity has provided, it is almost around 15%. But that does not mean that we should put all our money or all our corpus in equity only, because that would be too risky. Let me be very honest about it. So that also depends upon the factor that what is my risk profile, how much time do I need, to make my retirement corpus. That is also one of the very important factor, because equity is always good when you are talking about long term. For example, 10 years down the line, 15 years down the line, 20 years down the line. So one can make a very good amalgamation of the equity funds, right? So one can enter into large cap, one can enter into small cap, and so on and so forth. And there is some misconception, in the mind of people, that, putting your money in mutual funds or putting your money in equity is always a very risky proposition, right? So one should avoid it because it's highly risky. So let me correct that. In the similar way, other asset classes are having their pros and cons. Similarly, the equity market, or say the mutual funds, are also having different asset classes. So there are liquid funds, so there are short-term debt funds, there are debt funds, there are money market funds, and so on and so forth. So depending upon my risk appetite, I can choose if I want. I do not have sufficient time for for this SWP. If I have got limited time, so I can always start with the fund which is not very aggressive, but which would give me a handsome amount of return, right? At the same time, I would need to understand one very important point, that is real rate of return. So here the inflation would come into the picture. Whatever the return I am getting from the kind of investment, for example, if you take the name of fixed deposits, or if you take the name of any other instruments, be it bonds or debentures, so you should also always consider one fact, that the real rate of return is very important. So your rate of return which you are getting, you have to subtract it with the kind of inflation which is going on. So for example, right now it is somewhere around 7%. So if you invest your money in fixed deposits, so although you are getting a return of around 6 to 7%, but if you minus it from inflation, so practically, it would not be an advisable, asset class to get invested in. So definitely your investment should be in some asset class which would give you always a return which is always above than inflation, because that would be the real kind of rate of return that you would be getting, right? So these are some of the factors that we need to consider. And your risk profile plays a very important role. The time you have with you is a very important part. And some of the very intelligent and mature people do the asset allocation also. So they put some money in aggressive fund, they put some money into debt fund, and so on and so forth. So Ashwini sir, this is the way I would like to sum it up. Ashwini sir, I guess you are on mute.
Terribly sorry. So, as a thanks, Nitin, and importantly, I think for a lot of us who are regular on Get Set Up classes would know that we've discussed so many of these off and on in various fora out here, and asset allocation comes up every now and then. Risk profiling comes up every now and then, and of course, inflation beating comes up fairly regularly. Now, you mentioned all the three, as well as you mentioned the concept of or rather you mentioned SWP. I'd like to understand the concept behind SWP. But before we go into that, let me actually even once again suggest to everyone that the learning that we're going to get over here is, one is not to put all the eggs in one basket. Two is analyze our risk profile. A lot of us, I'm in the same bracket as well. Try and be a little conservative, but sometimes too much conservatism also is not good, because inflation, while you mentioned it, an inflation of 7% on an average, a lot of us who would have faced the perils of medical inflation or health inflation, which is far higher than the 7 that we get to see on the headline. So how does one tackle in optimizing return on one side to beat the inflation part? You mentioned equity, but is there a middle path ensured that takes care of a balanced approach, or does one need to kind of break it up into and put some amount on fixed deposits, some amount on illiquid assets like land or gold? What's your view on that? And finally, how does one add to your monthly income from this corpus? So you mentioned systematic withdrawal plan. How does that work? So if you could just address this, it'll be helpful.
Yeah, sure. So when we talk about SWP, that is a systematic withdrawal plan. So we would have to consider that there can be two categories when we talk about the investors who are going to implement SWP. One is the category who are already they are invested in some or the other SIP or the mutual funds. And the other category of people are that, they are not the investors, and they have to start investing, or they would require to take the advantage or reap the benefits of systematic withdrawal plan as such, right? So for the people who have already invested in some or the other mutual funds or SIP, so you need to consider that systematic withdrawal plan is a kind of arrangement wherein it is suggested. I mean, technically it is suggested that if you keep on withdrawing at least 0.75% to 1% of your invested money, that it would work very fine in the very long run, right? So for example, if somebody invest, or somebody is having a corpus of say 50 lakh of rupees, so 1% of 50 lakh is 50,000 rupees, right? So we would make the adjustment such that and that will depend upon the kind of risk profile that you are having, and the kind of the tenure that you are there, or the time period that we would be talking about. So if you want immediate if you are requiring immediate funds, then definitely putting it in, something called as liquid fund would serve the purpose, because liquid fund are the, asset classes which would provide you a rate of return of somewhere around 6 to 7%, right? So you would keep on receiving that. At the same time, it would lead you towards a better arrangement of this. But if you are keeping it a very long term, so probably you can take a moderate risk, right? So there are so many funds. For example, we are having a balanced kind of fund. So as the name would suggest, that balanced fund. So balanced fund is that they would use a combination. So not extreme exposure to equities, but somewhere around 30 to 40% maximum equity, and then 60% in the debt class. So if somebody is slightly ambitious, wants to take risk or can take risk, so definitely he can go towards this type of fund, that is the balance fund. If somebody's risk profile is slightly on a higher side, then probably he can take slight more risk and can shift it towards mid cap or small cap, because they definitely provide a much better return, right? But that purely depends upon the horizon and the kind of risk appetite. And I would suggest that if it is if it is not what I call it as a surplus money, then please refrain from getting invested into mid cap or say small cap, because of course they would provide exorbitant returns, extremely good returns. But at the same time, as the nature of finance suggests that the higher the risk, higher the return, right? Lower the risk, lower the return, right? So if the chances of returns are on a higher side, then the chances of if we consider an hypothetical situation, is that if the market gets deep, yeah, or the market gets down even 1%, then it would greatly affect your kind of corpus, right? So if somebody is prepared that it is not going to affect in a very short term, so definitely one can opt for that particular fund. But if you are not comfortable taking all the jerks of the market ahead, because as people would suggest that the market also has its pros and cons, right? And one has to introspect that how you fit into that particular market, because as Ashwini sir has rightly said that if we consider, forget about inflation, but the kind of medical inflation, or say the other household inflation, then definitely it would pose a great challenge for us to survive, in fact, right? And God forbid if you come across any such kind of family in your circle that who are encroached upon by some serious kind of illness, for example cancer, right? And it's very sad to mention that what trauma that family goes through, right? Even you people might have found that people are forced to sell off their property, their flat, their ornaments, right? And the worst thing is that in spite of that, that person could not be saved, right? So such a horrible story, and I'm just giving just an example to get you connected to those kind of situations. So with the kind of systematic withdrawal plan, actually it's a system wherein you can save your savings, right? So the correct
So, Nitin,
statement is, if you want to save your savings, that this is one of the best method which is there, right? And we need to understand the fundamentals, and because it provides you various options. But as far as our stature is concerned, our status is concerned, we have to pick that which situation is best for us, and then accordingly we can plan.
So Nitin, I think we get this for now is that, and I think one of the things for everyone over here is two aspects of again to be aware. One is before deciding anything, please do consult a professional advisor who you can trust. Within the family is perfectly fine, as well as an external perfectly fine. You have questions for Nitin later on, you can pose even after today and leave it at the Get Set Up chat, and we can pick that up and get those answered. More importantly, I think one needs to very clearly understand that it's not always about, or rather, it is never about the timing of the market. It's the time in the market. And we've discussed this at length in one of the past sessions, that the compounding effect of any investments. Equity, of course, is a higher return investment because it is a higher risk as well, on the balance sheet stack of the corporate, and therefore has volatility involved. But keeping a mix of asset classes helps you to hedge the situation of volatility years or volatility period. More importantly, I think the SWP strategy that you suggested of 0.75 to 1% of your corpus. So what you're saying is that your corpus remains intact, but at the same time, it allows you, a strategy allows you to keep withdrawing every month or once regularly through the year without impacting too much on the original corpus,
Yes.
and which in fact keeps adding and push and growing. Sorry, is somebody saying something? Okay, sorry. Once again, pose your questions on the chat box. A couple of them have already started coming in, so we'll take them at the end, importantly. But for more similar or for similar content or more content like this for your learning, please keep attending some of the live classes, but download the app for a lot of recordings available over there. As well, you can get a lot of this content available on the Franklin Templeton site, which you can visit the link we put post over there. So I think the next what Nitin we'd like to understand is that, in a strategy where there is an equity component, which you rightly have warned, saying that if your risk appetite does not allow, stay away from mid caps and small caps. They are volatile. But if it allows you, you're comfortable taking that risk. That's also perfectly fine. We have all kinds of people over here, risk profile. But for people who have with a moderate risk like me, you're suggesting something called the balanced or a hybrid fund. How
Yes.
does that work in terms of it also has an equity component, but what is happening in that I can kind of feel comfortable with a moderate risk? I don't want too much of risk, but I don't want at the same time I want a little high return than a 6-7% or 7-8% that
Correct.
the fixed deposit or fixed income gives me.
Correct. Correct. All right. So I got your question, and for the benefit of the audience, let me, because this is one of the commonest questions, that arise in such kind of platforms, and yeah,
Sorry, can somebody put everybody on mute? Thank you.
yeah. Thank you so much. So fundamentally, we need to understand, Ashwini sir, and the fact is very, very important, that unless and until you have slightest of the exposure in equity, you cannot, mind my words, you would not be able to beat the inflation, whatever kind of inflation we are talking about. Let it be our inflation, let it be our health inflation, let it be our, other kind of inflation. If you, because that is why, we have discussed the concept of real rate of return, right? So you have to have that exposure. Now, the situation could be many. For example, once a risk profile or the risk appetite is not that much, right? So you have to choose a fund which is relatively, less riskier, right? So for example, we have discussed about the kind of fund that is liquid fund. So basically what liquid fund, if I have to talk it in a language which a common people can understand, so such type of funds are basically used to park your money whenever there is a bull in the market. All right, so people used to take out their profit. They are the person who will book the profit, and they will use such kind of funds to park their money, right? And once the market again gets into the pace, then once again they would remain in the market, right? If the risk profile is slightly more, you can take slight risk, right? So there then comes the another opportunity, that is the balance fund. So here the exposure of equity would be there, but it would not be that much risky if you compare it with a person who are straight away investing into the stocks or the equity. And just to give a comparison, or just to give an anomaly, so it is just like putting your money directly into the stock market or putting it through mutual funds. So if you compare this phenomenon, you would understand that what I do mean. So if you directly putting your money into stock, so you are owning the responsibility, right? So you would be the person who would get the ownership and the responsibility of your money. But if you are investing through a mutual fund, then definitely there are fund managers who are expertise of the market, and they would make it sure that whatever the red hiring prospect. So uh, you might have heard a very jazzy statement coming in the advertisement: mutual fund subjects are market risk, please read the offer document, right? Which means that mutual funds are subject to market risk. Please read the offer document carefully before investing, right? Which means that ultimately you are aware that what this mutual fund is for, right? So if it is for a very riskier kind of investors who want to take risk, then of course it is understood that you have read the red hiring prospectus and then you are investing into it. So if you are investing in the mutual funds, right, if you're investing your money through mutual funds, then there is a difference, because your money is in in expertise hands, and they are the best people who would understand that how to maximize your return, because every mutual fund is having certain kind of objectives which is very clearly mentioned in that particular red hiring prospectus, right? So if I am investing into balanced fund, so I am not highly ambitious, right? But at the same time, I am not that much conservative that I am not that much conservative so that I keep all my money into debt fund, right? Or some conservative asset classes, right? So I would be a kind of person, or I'm a kind of investors who would like to reap the benefits of getting invested into equity, but I am not highly ambitious, I am not highly aggressive, right? So that is the way, I mean, that is that is the modus operandi by which I can increase my chances of getting higher returns. At the same time, I can minimize my risk also. Yes, sir.
So Nitin, I think it's clear that one is always needs to allocate assets well. One is always needs to understand its one's risk profile. For any new or a moderate risk taker like me, one can evaluate balanced funds, which kind of take care of both the sides of equity and non-equity kind of risks. One understands the fact that ultimately what mutual fund is nothing. It's just collecting everybody's money and investing in various instruments of corporates or government, and therefore generating those returns. Yes, it's also understood that it is being managed by people who are professionally both trained as well as have the experience to be able to understand the vagaries of each assets that they are deploying their money in, and there's behind them is lots of research and research team that are involved. So for somebody who's kind of even starting to give the corpus, one can go ahead and choose a fund or choose a scheme basis the risk analysis and basis the risk profiling. Now, similarly, what you also said is that once you've done that, you can also then withdraw from your existing corpus regularly to at least take care of your monthly expense, or add to the monthly expense, or just have another source of income from your corpus itself. Two interesting questions come to my mind. One is the tax implication, of the SWP, so to say. How does that get impacted vis-a-vis, say the fact that a long term, if I let it be and then withdraw as a lump sum. So could you just highlight some tax implications around that?
Yeah, sure. So let me just break down it into two parts. One is at the time of investing. So if we talk about mutual funds, then there is a section which is called as section 80C, which is applicable to mutual funds as well, right? But these mutual funds, so there are a specific class and specific category of mutual funds which are called as ELSS, right? So ELSS stands for equity linked savings schemes. And there is an upper cap of 1.5 lakh of rupees. So there are other asset classes also. For example, section 80C refers to in your investing in home loans also. I mean, the principal part is applicable for 80C. Similarly, your PPF is also eligible for 80C. And in the similar way, if you are investing up to 1.5 lakh rupees in a financial year, right, not calendar year, in a financial year, then it is subject to section 80C, right? So your your taxable income, I mean, that much amount would be deducted and the tax would be applicable on the remaining amount. So similarly here also the section 80C comes into the picture. Second is if we talk about SWP and the implication of tax. So there are two types of taxes which are there. One is called as the short-term capital gain tax and the second one is the long-term capital gain tax. So short-term, as the name suggests, if you are because SWP, whatever is the amount that we are withdrawing, it would be considered as your redemption, right? So all the redemption, they would, if it is done during 1 year, I mean within 1 year, then it would fall under short-term capital gain tax. And if it is more than 1 year, then it comes under the long-term capital gain tax. So in first case, there would be a tax implication of 20%. And in the second case, there would be a tax implication of 12.5%. So this is basically the tax implication that our SWP and the mutual fund investment are subjected to. Yeah, sure.
I think here also one thing to highlight is that each individual's tax status will differ very big, subject to other income, etc., and the tax planning. So it's always best to consult your own CA. But as
Yes.
the scheme itself or just using it, the short term and the long term implications are there. So one should be aware of it, but no different from all other income streams that one has, whether it's fixed deposit interest or whether it is real estate investment or rent income. I think they all fall under various buckets, and one needs to just evaluate the real rate of return, the real rate of post-tax return. I think you already highlighted the real rate of return from an
Yes.
inflation perspective, but the real rate of return along with post-tax return is
Post-tax return. Correct.
important. I'm starting to take up questions which have already come in the chat, and maybe you can highlight further strategies around it. So one of the questions which has popped up is that at a later age, which is 74 and above, mutual funds, would you advise and believe Mehboob ji believes that the mutual funds fetch returns only after 3 years. So what's your thought process, or what's your advice for somebody at wanting to kind of still generate return? Is 3 years the minimum cutoff? How does it work?
All right. So I got the question, and basically, there are so many statements, there are so many myths which are prevalent in the market. So first of all, let me put it that way. That first of all, let me understand that what is what kind of risk that I can bear up with the kind of corpus that I'm rightly having, right? And depending upon various factors that we have already discussed, that what is the minimum expectation, or whatever is the minimum amount that I'm expecting out of my investment, right? So if your present status allow you to get invested, because say mutual fund is not only about equity funds. Let me first of all clarify that thought, because most of the people, whenever you talk about that, invest in mutual fund, so they are having one perception that probably you are talking about investing in equities, which is not correct. In mutual funds also, like the kind of examples that I've already put it forward, that there are so many funds wherein you would get a much higher return than investing in, for example, FDs, fixed deposits, for example, investing in recurring deposits, or for example, investing in gold. So there are much higher returns that you can get into this. And this is also, and unfortunately, this is a myth that you get the returns only after 3 years. So because here we are talking about systematic withdrawal plan. So if you are having a healthier corpus and if you want immediate returns, then probably the strategy which I have suggested you, that you should pick up the asset class or the kind of fund which is not very much aggressive, right? So from the next month only, you would start getting returns accordingly, right? And if you are if your risk appetite is slightly on a higher side, you can go for the balanced fund. And likewise, if you want the fund, say for example after 5 years, right now you do not require that much because you have already made some arrangements, then you can probably expose your corpus to slightly riskier investment also, for example large cap, mid cap, or small cap also. So that purely depends upon what kind of risk appetite we are having. Mutual funds are not bad. Let me once again reinstate that. It only depends upon how you are able to read our own profile in terms of risk return, and what is the time horizon that we require to build up our corpus, right? So we need to understand our profile first, and then accordingly make the most use, because mutual funds are very transparent. If you go through the official document, you would be very transparent that what kind of mutual funds I am getting invested to, what might be the rate of return that I might be getting with a particular kind of mutual funds, right? So that is
I'm
it.
I'm glad you addressed it in a way that, and I think one other question was there, which also kind of got addressed, but let me just add to it.
Yeah.
Is that one doesn't need to wait for 3 years. There are I think Nitin has already clarified that mutual fund is not only equity. There are many other instruments that they invest in. There are the concept of liquid funds that Nitin mentioned in his conversation a little earlier. You can park your fund even as small as less as even for one day. And even in that one day, the accrual income that comes on the underlying assets that the fund manager has invested in. In most liquid funds, they largely invest in government bonds, government treasury bills, or commercial papers of corporates. So there is a daily accrual of interest which normally comes. So even a one day return can be actually be and can be availed of from such an investment. Very similar to another question that has already been probably answered in a way, is that what the implications are, or the risks and benefits of SIP, which I think you've already kind of already answered, that the various schemes are there, and how and when can you withdraw the returns, which also we've just kind of answered. So just to clarify and to add to Nitin's comment, there are many out there now. In the last 20 or 30 years, the industry's evolved in a way that for each risk profile, each category of individual, one can actually look forward to deploying one's corpus. And therefore the diversity available, sometimes it's too much and too confusing, and hence that's why you
Yes.
want to actually always consult somebody who's kind of in as part of it. And I'm starting more questions out here.
Okay.
Anita has asked, what kind of mutual funds do you recommend now that I'm 69 years? Uh, I think it's less about mutual fund investment, Anita. I think what Nitin will probably say is what kind of schemes you should be thinking about, because the fund houses, each one, there are about almost close to 40 plus fund houses out there. They all have within the fund houses there are strategies, but within them there are schemes they make for various categories of investors. So, Nitin, you want to take this? What would be your suggestion, rather than a recommendation for somebody in the 70s to look for what kind of schemes can they deploy their assets around?
Yeah, sure. Because the age that you are suggesting is some wherein you cannot afford to have much more exposure towards equity, right? So it would be always an intelligent move if even if you want to start your SWP. What I would prefer is that you can start with liquid fund, or there is a category of fund which is called as the ultra short term fund, which is basically for a span of say 1 year or 6 months to 1 year, wherein you can expect a considerable return of say somewhere around 7 to 8%. There are because on such you can do your research also. I mean, there are so many funds which are available under such category, because the equity exposure at this particular age should not be more than 20%. I would strongly suggest, right? So, if you want to reap the benefits of SWP, then you should go for a fund which is having predominantly, debts, your exposure, and maximum 15 to 20% equity, not more than that at this particular age.
नितिन, एक सवाल गीता जी से है, that SWP पे थोड़ा सा आप elaborate करिए
Yeah,
हिंदी
yeah,
में.
yeah. I have just gone through that, and I was
Yes.
just about to
So,
make a comment over
so
that. No
SWP पे
problem.
थोड़ा सा थोड़ा थोड़ा
कोई
सा
बात नहीं।
elaborate करिए प्लीज।
हाँ, माँ सरस्वती की कृपा से मेरी इंग्लिश और हिंदी एकदम दुरुस्त है, सो आई कैन डू दैट। सो गीता जी, मैं आपको ये कहना चाह रहा हूँ कि SWP का मतलब होता है सिस्टमेटिक विड्रॉवल प्लान। आपने जैसे हिंदी में सुना होगा SIP, सिस्टमेटिक इन्वेस्टमेंट प्लान। मतलब हम इन्वेस्टमेंट का मतलब होता है निवेश करना, तो हम लोग जैसे सिस्टमेटिक निवेश करते हैं उसी तरीके से हम लोग सिस्टमेटिक विड्रॉवल भी कर सकते हैं। विड्रॉवल का मतलब होता है हमारा पैसा निकालना। ठीक है, आपको जहां पर समझ में नहीं आया आप मुझे टोक सकते हैं। सो SIP की तरह हम लोग SWP भी कर सकते हैं। SWP का जो मूल प्रिंसिपल होता है वो ये होता है कि हम एक अपने टारगेट के हिसाब से या हमें जितना मंथली पैसा चाहिए होता है, राइट, उसको हम ध्यान में रखते हुए बचा हुआ प्रिंसिपल अमाउंट उसको वहीं रखे रहने दे सकते हैं, जिससे कि उसको मार्केट के रिटर्न्स मिलते रहें। तो मैंने सजेस्ट किया है कि नॉर्मली हमारा जो प्रिंसिपल बताता है, हमारा सिद्धांत बताता है कि ये जो विड्रॉवल करने वाला जो अमाउंट है ये समवेयर अराउंड 0.75% से लेकर 1% होना चाहिए। क्यों? उसका भी एक रीजन है, क्योंकि यदि इस अमाउंट को, जो निकालने वाला अमाउंट है, इसको आप 1% से ज्यादा रखेंगे तो कहीं ना कहीं आपका प्रिंसिपल जो मूलधन है उस पर इफेक्ट पड़ेगा। और धीरे धीरे जब आप इसको रेगुलरली निकालते जाएंगे तो वहां पर जो प्रिंसिपल है, जिस पर्पस के लिए आपने SWP का स्कीम लिया है, आपका वो पर्पस वहां पर सॉल्व नहीं हो पाएगा। ठीक है, तो यहाँ पर एक, जैसे मैंने आपको उदाहरण बताया था, 50 लाख रुपए का हमने एग्जाम्पल लिया था। आप उसका यदि 1% देखते हैं तो वो 50,000 होता है। तो आपकी जरूरतें यदि 50,000 रुपए से पूरी होती है तो आप वहीं से उसको इन्वेस्ट करना शुरू कर सकते हैं, लमसम अमाउंट उसको कॉर्पस में रखकर। और डिपेंडिंग आपका जो भी रिस्क प्रोफाइल है, आपका रिस्क एपेटाइट है, आप लिक्विड फंड से चूज शुरू कर सकते हैं। आप जो है अल्ट्रा शॉर्ट टर्म फंड से चूज कर सकते हैं, या तो आप, जैसा कि आपको अश्विनी जी ने बताया था, बैलेंस फंड पर भी जा सकते हैं। या आपको सिर्फ ये याद रखना पड़ेगा कि जैसे जैसे आप एक लेडर ऑफ रिस्क के ऊपर बढ़ रहे हैं तो वहां पर आपको उस चीज को ध्यान में रखना पड़ेगा कि आप जो है थोड़ा सा रिस्क भी ज्यादा ले रहे हैं वहां पर, राइट। तो वो मेरी रिस्क के एपेटाइट को देखते हुए मैं अपना फंड चूज करूंगी। और जो विड्रॉवल फंड रहेगा वो 0.75% से 1% आइडियली बोला गया है। इससे होगा क्या, एक तरफ आपका प्रिंसिपल भी मार्केट के जो रिटर्न्स हैं उनका एडवांटेज लेने में सक्सेसफुल रहेगा, और साथ ही साथ आपका जो पैसा है वो भी आपको हर महीने मिलता रहेगा। ठीक है, साथ में टैक्स का जो एडवांटेज है वो मैंने आपको बता ही दिया है। और इस तरीके से जो है आप सारी तरीके के इन्फ्लेशन को बीट करने में सक्सेसफुल हो पाएंगे। गीता जी, आई होप आई हैव मेड इट वेरी क्लियर। आपको शायद समझ में आया होगा हिंदी में, मैंने पूरा प्रयास किया आपको अच्छे तरीके से समझाने का। कैन यू प्लीज कंफर्म दैट गीता जी? ओके, ओके, ऑलवेज वेलकम गीता जी।
Nitin, thanks for that. Very helpful. Geeta, that's very nice to know. Thank you. Quick another question is more about somebody who has 90% of the corpus in FD, senior citizen savings scheme, the PM Yojana, PPF. How much percentage of these should I invest in a mutual fund? Is there a guiding principle or a thumb rule that one can think of? And the caveat that Nidhi has put in over there is that both of us receive pension. So I think there's regular income coming in. So the existing corpus, which is deployed in these fixed instruments, FD and the PM Yojana, et cetera, can there be some of it on maturity be looked at mutual fund? And what should be a some kind of guidance? There is no hard and fast. Again,
यस, यस।
we said that in the beginning, depends on the risk profile, this depends on all other many factors. But if there's a thumb rule that you would kind of say that what percentage should somebody keep?
Yeah, so considering the scenario and considering the status, uh, there is a plus point that I am seeing, and which is a very strong point, that they are getting regular pension, right? So, which means that as far as meeting the daily expenses, or for their household expenses, so there is absolutely no risk at all, right? But considering the kind of age they have already reached, so if they want to reap the benefits of getting invested in equity, so at this particular age, there is a principle guiding that if your age is say above 60, then your exposure to equity should not be more than 20%. as a general rule only, right? So you can start, getting invested. I mean, you can go through the route of SIP, or if you want to start straight away, if you are having a lump sum amount, right? And if you can afford to have slight risk, then probably you can go towards a balanced fund, right? Because at your age, balanced fund would be the only good option to have, right? I would not recommend to go for small cap or mid cap at this particular status, right? But you can definitely reap the benefits of getting invested into balanced fund. Let it be SIP or let it be SWP on. Yeah.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Nitin. Sorry, did somebody say something?
I said, say thank you. Thank you for the answer.
Always welcome. Always welcome.
Thank you. And on that note, please feel free to download the Get Setup app. A lot of content similar across asset classes. Such discussions are available on the recorded format over there, as well as feel free to get onto the link of FT Academy, Franklin Templeton Academy, where some of the similar contents available there as well. Once again, Nitin, I'd like to probably asks, and I think you mentioned just now, is that equity exposure for above the age of 60 should not be about close to 20% or so, depending again largely on the risk profile, because also there is a good old rule that that retirement planners have used, that 100 minus the age should be an equity exposure. So that's broadly we're talking about anything between 20 to 40 is can be an exposure depending on your risk appetite, risk profile. Also, I think what you've highlighted very well is that mutual funds are not necessarily only equity focused. There is so many within that options available, government security funds, liquid funds, depending again on how long do you want to park your corpus and when do you think that you will need. And in an earlier session at Get Set Up, we'd also discuss about the withdrawal, with the waterfall mechanism of withdrawing in case of emergency. That the longer you keep the equity investments or the equity focus investments, the chances of you getting a higher return are better. So in between any emergencies, do not break that, but take away some from the debt funds, and that's where the strategy of asset allocation comes as a very important strategy to think about. What do you think about, or what's your view on? Is it a concept of once invested, forget about it, or like how we used to do in the past with say real estate or land or a house, or is it something that one needs to kind of regularly evaluate, and how that regularity should be thought about? What's your sense on that? Unlike a fixed deposit or a fixed maturity, one just puts it. We just saw in the previous question, PM Yojana scheme or senior citizens deposits. Those are fill it, forget it, shut it kind of investments. How does one look at it? For what we've been talking about? How does one look at these?
Yes. So let me answer it in that way that I have seen many people or many investors, monitoring their net asset value every day, or say after or another day, right? And I do not know, because there is so much hype about it, that and this is due to the fact that people who have earned a considerable fair amount of money in mutual funds, right? So they and since last 2 years, you see a plethora of advertisements that are coming on national television, right? Mutual fund sahi hai, and the tagline is that. And after that, there is considerable amount of people who have started investing in mutual funds. But we have to understand the principle of mutual fund, right? That although it is not a direct investment to the stock market, right? Because it is through somebody who is having the expertise of getting invested in the market. That is the fund manager, right? Which is appointed by the asset management company. So first of all, you be convinced that your money is in safe hands, right? And it is under the government regulations. There are governing bodies, so your money is 100% safe. But actually, whatever is your objective to remain into the mutual funds. So what fundamentally people do wrong is that when we talk about getting returns from the equity market or say from the mutual fund market, it has to be for long term. Now, coming to the definition of how do you define long term? So minimum, there is somebody who is among the audience who has told that, the returns would start coming only after 3 years, right? So this is a kind of myth that is there in the market, but in a way it is true that once you invest in, it would be a better choice if you just analyze that what is the situation going on after every, say, quarter, or say in a 6 months, right? So you would understand that whatever objective mentioned in the red hiring prospect and whatever my current position, are they matching, or are is this in sync with each other, right? Now what this thing would do, if you analyze your status in, say, 3 months or 6 months, so you would be able to decide that, if the fund is going in the right direction, then it is always good to remain invested, right? And if it is not moving, I mean, if there is something drastically going wrong, then probably I can take some decision, right? I can wait and watch and take some decision. Definitely, watching the NAV every other day would really not help, because there are times, and they are the market link plan. However you differentiate it from the, guaranteed plan, it is not a guaranteed plan. We have to understand that. But with the kind of fund type that we choose, right, it always makes a sense to, remain invested in the market, because the market would go up, market would get down. And definitely that is why, it is said that SIP is the best choice. Why? Because you are basically doing the rupee cost averaging, right? So rupee cost averaging definitely is there to save from that particular effect. So if you are doing SIP, then you need to understand that there would be some 4 to 5 times where the NAV is on the higher side, so you would be getting lesser number of units. There would be times when market is going down, which is good for you, right? Because you are getting more number of units, so this would compensate the ups and downs, and that is how we are actually averaging it out, right? So this is the way to do. And definitely give allow some time for your fund to grow. Definitely, if you are going through the SIP way, actually SIP was introduced only to counteract this type of things, right? So it doesn't make sense to monitor your NAV every other day, or say every single day, which is not a good trend. Yeah, Ashwini.
So nice of you to highlight that, Nitin. That the fact is that they don't look at it every day, but at the same time, don't ignore it. And the frequency can be once in 3 months or once in 6 months.
Yes.
Do a look back, whether it's equity focused or whether it is a debt focused fund or even whether it's a short term or liquid fund. It doesn't matter about the underlying asset class. The regularity of checking and reviewing should be there, but not as much as every day also, because underlying assets also go through volatility, and it is not worth your while to
Yes.
do it
Yes.
every day. That's an interesting highlight. I think I'll take another question over here. Is that, and this is Mira has asked about, in an emergency requirement of funds, what do you need to do? Equity or breaking FDs or mutual fund withdrawal, which I've done 3 years. I think before I hand it over to Nitin, in a previous session we had discussed about the waterfall mechanism. Feel free to get onto the Get Setup app, and there's a strategy discussed at length. But however, I will hand over to Nitin to kind of give us a view that in case of emergency, which part of the asset should be one of the first ones to break, withdraw, or use up. What would you do, Nitin, in your case, or how would you recommend?
Well, there are various ways to look at it, because nowadays there are so many options which are available, right? So I would talk very practical approach regarding this. So there are so many options available. First, if I have got an healthier portfolio, right? So definitely taking, because it's an emergency, right? And I do not have time. And the most positive thing about getting it redeemed from a mutual fund is that I get the money credited to my account within 2 to 3 working days. That's it, right? So one of the best way, if it is not that urgent, I can wait for a couple of days. Then definitely, and why I can redeem from mutual fund is that, because my remaining, I mean, money is still getting invested in the same amount of fund. So if I get the market support, then say during a span of, say, 6 months or 1 year, I would be able to cover up that also. That definitely depends upon the amount which I require, right? So one of the way to look at it, that because the rest of the amount I am invested in the market only. So there is fair chance that I can make up the loss, or I can make up the interest rate or the rate of return from my investment only. Second option is probably I can split it up. I can take half of my money from my mutual fund. And now there are so many facilities of acquiring loan also on your fixed deposits, right? Because I have seen people, just breaking up their FDs whenever the emergency comes, right? So we have to understand the fact that, and I mentioned that also, that mutual fund is, or the SWP is one of the way to save your savings. So FDs you have gone for, or FDs you have done to for some long-term planning, right? So if there is no hard emergency, then probably you can take halfway measure also. I mean, half of the money from the mutual funds and half of the money you can avail the loan also, so that your FD doesn't get broken down, right? So that depends upon the severity of the emergency actually. So that depends upon the situation. And I would definitely have gone towards equity, just for the positive thing is that because the rest of the money is still getting invested into mutual funds. So I would make up the money in the long run. So that would be, the appropriate way that I would have approached.
Thanks,
Can I
Nitin.
ask one question?
Yeah, sure. Please go ahead, and then I'll probably end with the last question on the chat. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you very much for the session organized by Get Setup. My question is, what should be the SWP rate? 1% per month or 0.75% per month?
I didn't mention the SWP rate actually. Okay,
Well,
so let me clarify that thing.
Nitin, if I think the question is not the rate,
Yes,
but
yes.
the amount of withdrawal,
Yes.
0.75% monthly of the corpus or 0.75% annually. I think you suggested annually.
Yes.
In a way, because in your example you said 50 lakhs and therefore 50,000
Yeah.
an annual format. But I'll please clarify. That's an interesting question.
Yes.
50,000 is 10% annually.
Sorry, it'll be 1%, sir. 10% will be 5 lakhs.
Okay, yeah, sorry, yeah. But 50,000 annually means it's just 4,000 per month.
So Nitin, can you clarify what's the strategy normally you recommend? 0.75% monthly, 0.75 to 1%, or is it annual?
So,
Sorry.
0.75% or 1%, I didn't suggest it the rate of return. It is actually the principal. I mean, the principal on which this SWP is based. So if you take out 0.75% or 1% of say 50 lakh of rupees, which comes to 50,000 rupees. So every month, I mean, you can withdraw 50,000 from your corpus, and the remaining amount, for example, 50,000 minus 5 lakh of rupees, that is 4,50,000 rupees, which is again exposed to the rate of return of that particular SIP. So it is considered that 0.75% to 1% is the ideal rate which you should withdraw, not more than that. Because if you withdraw more than that, then there are chances that in the long run, your principal would not be that much. And it would basically defeat the purpose of, SWP. This is the principle that I talked about.
So it is 9 to 12%.
Yes.
Annually.
Yes, yes.
And what is your take on FD basically? Because FD, basically everything you pay on tax, TDS, and then you're left with, it's one of the most underrated as far as I see it. But the problem is I'm exposed in equity mutual fund, and I'm also exposed in direct stocks.
Yeah.
So I'm also exposed in FDs. But whenever I contact any financial planner, they say that FD should be zero. What is your take on that?
Sorry, I do not agree to it that FD should be zero because of the very simple reason, because as per the principle of asset allocation, you should allocate your money, or you should allocate your corpus in as many asset classes as possible. Because FDs, however we talk about that, it does, I mean, the FDs are not able to beat the inflation. But yes, as some of the ma'am has asked that during the emergency, definitely, FDs are the better choice because you have to take into account the liquidity component also. So as far as the liquidity component is concerned, hard cash is the most liquid. After that, gold. And after that, if I have to rate it, it is FD, fixed deposit only. Because I already mentioned, if you want to redeem your money from mutual fund, it still take at least 2 to 3 working days for money to come. So I have never told that FDs are a bad choice. FD are good, but in terms of, say, real rate of return that we have discussed, that your rate of return minus inflation, right? Uh, uh, so that real rate of return, in terms of that real rate of return, FD does not qualify in a very nicest way, I would say. But we never said that investing in FD is bad.
So
FD.
But most
Nitin,
of the planners, whomever I talk, they say that your investment should not be there in FD at all because it gives a negative return because of the inflation.
so
But
if I'm
still, I've invested
so,
my money in FDs also.
Yeah.
so
Yeah, Ashwini sir.
So I think the question like this is best answered on a format which is one-on-one based on a planner. So if your planners kind of has other information which Nitin may not have, it's up to you. But yes, there are certain advantages as well as certain disadvantages of each product. From an asset allocation perspective, one needs to kind of think about what your current status in and what your liquidity needs are, and then allocate because each one and the tax implications as well, because whenever you need money there is also tax implications on breaking an FD, even from withdrawing from mutual fund there are tax implications.